People think betrayal is an event. It's not, it's a revelation. When they betrayed you, they thought they were taking a shortcut to a better life. What they didn't understand is that betrayal always circles back, and the person it destroys first is the one who committed it. You weren't the loss, their integrity was, and without integrity, a person's entire life eventually collapses. When someone commits betrayal, the world tends to focus on the person who was hurt, the one who was left behind, deceived, or abandoned. But the deeper psychological truth, the one people rarely understand, is that the real damage occurs inside the betrayer long before it unfolds in the life of the person they harmed. When a person chooses betrayal, they fracture something essential within themselves, their character. And character is not just a moral idea. It is the structural integrity of a human being. It's the framework that allows someone to think clearly, act steadily, form stable relationships, and create a meaningful life. Without it, everything eventually decays. Betrayal is not just a wrong action. It is a self-inflicted wound to the soul, and it begins corroding the betrayer from the inside the moment they act on it. Every human being has an internal orientation system, a conscience that tells us when we are acting in alignment with truth, loyalty, and responsibility. When a person goes against that internal compass, they don't simply get away with it. What they do is rupture the psychological mechanism that keeps their life stable. A person cannot harm someone who trusted them without also harming their own ability to trust themselves. And once you can't trust yourself, you are lost. You stop believing in your own decisions. You stop respecting who you are. You stop seeing yourself as someone capable of goodness. That self-respect is the foundation of a functioning identity. Betrayal breaks it. This is why people who betray often begin to fall apart afterwards, even if their external lives look fine at first. Their relationships become unstable because they know they themselves are untrustworthy. Their ambitions collapse because they unconsciously sabotage themselves. After all, a person who has violated their own conscience no longer feels worthy of success. Their emotional life becomes chaotic because guilt and shame don't just disappear. They transform into anxiety, aggression, defensiveness, or avoidance. They may not consciously connect their suffering to their actions, but their psyche certainly does. Human beings are wired to live in alignment with truth. When someone chooses deception, their psychology punishes them relentlessly, and this inner punishment is far more destructive than anything they did to the person they betrayed. You can heal, you can rebuild, you can learn, you can become stronger, but they damaged the only thing they cannot replace, their own moral architecture. When you lose a person who loved you, you hurt. When you lose the ability to love yourself, you collapse. The betrayer must now navigate a life with a broken internal compass. They must try to build relationships while carrying the knowledge that they are capable of betrayal. They must try to pursue stability with a fractured sense of integrity. They must try to find happiness while knowing they undermine the happiness of someone who gave them trust. That internal contradiction begins to unravel them. People think guilt is a momentary feeling. It's not. It's a fracture that expands over time. A person who betrays begins to see themselves in a negative light because their actions have shown them they are someone capable of violating values they once believed in. And when your actions contradict who you think you are, you cannot maintain psychological stability. Something must give. Either they numb themselves, which slowly destroys them, or they face what they've done, which feels unbearable. Either way, the internal turmoil remains. This isn't karma, it's psychology. When you act against your conscience fights back, and it fights from the inside. They might distract themselves, jump into new relationships, chase validation, or drown themselves in busyness, but the unresolved moral injury continues to destabilize their life. They cannot escape themselves. The person they betrayed may walk away and heal, but they carry the damage everywhere they go. And here's the most crucial piece. Betrayal degrades a person's ability to form genuine connections in the future. Because once you betray someone who trusted you, you lose an essential human capacity, the capacity to feel deserving of trust yourself. You become fearful that others will do to you what you did to someone else. You project your own disloyalty outward. You assume people will abandon you. You assume people will deceive you. And so, the world becomes a reflection of your own broken integrity. Betrayal rewires the betrayer's perception of relationships and not in a way that leads to a stable or fulfilling life. So when someone betrays you, it may feel at first like you are the one who is lost, but over time something becomes clear. They did not harm your core. They harmed theirs. They did not break your future. They broke their own. And while you rebuild, grow, and rise. They must live with the internal chaos their actions created. They damaged the foundation of their character, and without a stable foundation, no life can stand for long. You can rebuild what was broken inside you, but the person who betrayed you cannot escape what they shattered within themselves. This is one of the most overlooked truths about human behavior and moral psychology. When someone hurts you, especially someone you trusted deeply, the damage you experience is real. Pain, confusion, loss, disappointment. But that pain, as profound as it may be, is temporary. It moves, it transforms, and with time, effort, and reflection, it evolves into strength, clarity, and resilience. Human beings are remarkably capable of healing. We are built to adapt, to overcome, to recover from wounds, both emotional and psychological. Even betrayal, one of the deepest wounds a person can endure, eventually becomes a catalyst for growth if you allow it. But the betrayer doesn't get this opportunity so easily, because while you are healing from what they did, they are living with what they did. And there is a world of difference between those two experiences. When someone breaks your trust, it may alter your view of them, of relationships, or even of yourself for a while, but eventually, you rebuild those views into something wiser and stronger. However, when someone breaks their own integrity, that is not something they can simply get over. They must live inside the mind that committed the betrayal. They must face the guilt that surfaces at unexpected moments. They must confront the parts of themselves that they exposed as weak, selfish, or morally unstable. And unlike your healing, which is a natural upward path, their journey is a downward spiral unless they confront the full weight of their choices, and most people never do. The betrayed often ask, "Why did they do this to me?" But the real question is, why did they do this to themselves? The person who betrays often believes they are choosing an easy path, an escape route, a shortcut to something more desirable. But what they actually choose is a psychological burden that grows heavier over time. They might think they can silence their conscience, but conscience is not something you can permanently bury. It resurfaces. It demands attention. It disrupts peace. It erodes self-respect. You can lose someone you love and eventually find love again, but when you lose respect for yourself, the entire world becomes difficult to navigate. The second keynote is rooted in this essential truth: what they destroyed in you, you can rebuild. What they destroyed in themselves, they cannot outrun. You can stitch together your self-worth, your confidence, your understanding of relationships. You can grow wiser, stronger, more self-aware. But they must live with the knowledge that they betrayed someone who would have stood by them. They must live with the internal fracture created by their disloyalty. That fracture becomes a quiet but persistent voice reminding them of who they were in that moment. And that voice does not fade easily. Healing requires courage, and you have that courage, even if you don't fully recognize it yet. You face the pain and process it. You look at the memories that hurt and slowly detach the sting from them. You relearn trust, first in yourself, then in others. You gain insight into patterns, boundaries, and expectations. All of this rebuilds you. The pain is temporary, but the strength you gain becomes permanent. Betrayal does not define you, your recovery does. But the betrayer's journey is different because it lacks the element of redemption unless they actively pursue it. And most don't. Their guilt becomes something they hide, suppress, or deny. Yet it follows them. In new relationships, they fear being betrayed in return. In moments of silence, memories of their actions echo back at them. In conflicts, defensiveness becomes their shield, because deep down they know what they are capable of doing. This is the psychological boomerang effect of betrayal. They fear receiving the same wound they inflicted. And that fear corrodes the foundation of future connections. People think the person who is betrayed is the one left holding the emotional burden. But the truth is reversed. The betrayed suffer clean pain, pain that leads somewhere. The betrayer suffers dirty pain, pain created by their own actions, from which there is no natural escape. Clean pain heals you, dirty pain haunts them. That is the difference. You may not realize it yet, but you have the advantage. Your pain has a direction. Their guilt does not. Your wound can close. Theirs stays open. You can rebuild trust in yourself and others. They cannot rebuild the part of themselves they willingly destroyed without confronting and repairing their inner corruption, and that is an enormous psychological mountain most people never climb. In the long run, your healing becomes your elevation. Their betrayal becomes their internal corruption. And that is why what they broke in you is recoverable, but what they broke in themselves will follow them everywhere they go. People often imagine betrayal as a momentary act, something that happens once, wounds someone, and then life simply continues. But that's not how human psychology works. Betrayal plants a seed, and that seed grows. Not in the person who was harmed, but in the person who committed the harm. It begins as a small fracture in their moral structure, but over time it expands into chaos that touches every corner of their life. When someone betrays a loyal, good-hearted individual, they set off a chain reaction inside themselves that they cannot control. They don't see it at first. They often believe the betrayal was justified or necessary or harmless. But the psyche knows better, and the psyche always keeps score. Chaos doesn't erupt all at once. It creeps in slowly. It starts with a subtle discomfort, the awareness that they've acted beneath their own standards. They might ignore it, dismiss it, or rationalize it away, but rationalization doesn't repair the break they've caused within themselves. Instead, it widens it. A person who betrays must rewrite their self-narrative to avoid facing the truth that they acted dishonorably. And when you distort reality to protect yourself from guilt, your entire life begins shifting on unstable ground. You lose touch with who you are, you lose clarity, you lose strength. Over time, this inner distortion spreads into their relationships. Someone who betrays a loyal individual becomes suspicious of loyalty itself. They no longer believe in the concept of trust because they violated it. They assume others will eventually do to them what they did to you. And this assumption creates a world where everyone becomes a potential threat. Their new relationships become fragile, filled with insecurity and defensiveness. They project their own untrustworthiness outward, believing no one is truly committed, authentic, or dependable. In reality, it is their conscience speaking. It is reminding them that they have already revealed their own capacity for betrayal. This is how chaos begins. It's internal at first, a lack of peace, a lack of grounding, a subtle shame that never goes silent. Then it becomes external. They begin making impulsive decisions because stability requires self-respect, and betrayal erodes that self-respect. They chase distractions. They pursue short-term pleasures. They avoid introspection because looking inward would force them to acknowledge the truth. Their life loses structure. Their relationships lose depth. Their decisions lose wisdom. The integrity they sacrificed was the foundation of their psychological house, and now the whole structure tilts. People think betrayers thrive, but most of the time, their success is surface level. Beneath the surface, there's turmoil. Their emotions become unpredictable. They might lash out easily. They might become more sensitive to criticism. They might feel chronically dissatisfied, restless, or anxious. These emotions aren't random. They are symptoms of a moral injury they never addressed. The human psyche demands alignment with truth. When someone acts against that truth, the consequences appear in the form of emotional instability. You can't hurt someone deeply and expect your own mind to remain untouched. The betrayed person suffers, yes, but the suffering has direction. It forces growth, reflection, and rebuilding. The betrayer suffers in circles. Their chaos repeats, their mistakes repeat, their emotional storms repeat, because nothing inside them has healed. They didn't just wound another person, they wounded their own integrity. And without integrity, there can be no stable life. Opportunities slip through their fingers. Good people drift away. New relationships collapse under the weight of their unresolved guilt. They find themselves living in patterns they don't understand, patterns they themselves created. The saddest part is that many betrayers genuinely don't grasp why their life becomes chaotic. They look for external explanations. They blame circumstances, timing, other people, bad luck. They refuse to see the root, that they set their own life on fire the moment they acted against someone who loved or trusted them. Betrayal is not just a moral wrong, it is a self-destructive act. It corrupts the psychological machinery required for stability, meaning, and fulfillment. And meanwhile, the person they betrayed begins to rise. Slowly, painfully, but steadily, the betrayed becomes stronger. They learn boundaries, they learn self-respect, they learn emotional resilience. With time, their life becomes clearer, their relationships more authentic, their future brighter. The contrast becomes undeniable. One person climbs, the other spirals. This is why the third keynote is so crucial. Betrayal creates a lifetime of chaos for the one who commits it, because the cost of harming a loyal heart is not paid in the moment, It is paid across years of inner conflict, broken relationships, and unexplainable turmoil. Betrayal doesn't simply hurt someone else. It initiates the slow unraveling of the betrayer's entire life. They never realized that the very person they took for granted was, in fact, one of the most valuable assets in their entire life. People often make the catastrophic mistake of assuming that loyalty is common, that kindness is replaceable, and that someone who genuinely cares will always be there no matter how poorly they're treated. This illusion is one of the most dangerous traps a person can fall into. When someone betrays or breaks the trust of a loyal, grounded, emotionally intelligent individual, they don't just lose a relationship, they lose the rarest kind of support system a human being can have. And the tragedy is that most people only understand this after they've already burned the bridge. A loyal person isn't just someone who stays. A loyal person is someone who invests. They invest emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. They pour into others because their nature is to build, not destroy, to nurture, not take advantage, to strengthen, not weaken. When you have a person like that in your life, you are not just loved, you are fortified. They amplify your potential. They stabilize your chaos. They bring clarity where you have confusion. They hold you accountable without humiliating you, and they stand by you even when you're not at your best. Losing a person like that is not a regular loss. It's the loss of a foundation. But to the betrayer, none of this is visible at first. They assume your loyalty is effortless. They assume your patience is unlimited. They assume your forgiveness is automatic. They assume you tolerate hurt because you're weak, not understanding it's because you're strong. This blindness is precisely why betrayal comes so easily to them. They don't see your loyalty as a gift. They see it as an entitlement they believe they deserve. It's simply for existing, instead of recognizing the character, discipline, and love required to give it. And because they take it for granted, they misuse it. They push boundaries. They assume you won't walk away. They gamble with your heart, convinced the game has no real consequences. But the moment betrayal happens, the moment they cross the line thinking there will be no price to pay, something irreversible shifts. Suddenly, the person who made their life easier is gone. The one who supported them through storms is no longer there to steady them. The one who cared enough to call out their flaws with compassion is no longer in their corner. The one who believed in their potential more than they believed in themselves is no longer cheering them on. And this absence creates a vacuum they cannot fill with superficial connections, temporary distractions, or shallow relationships, because people don't realize how rare loyalty is until they no longer have it. When someone betrays you, they assume they're losing a person. They don't understand they're losing an entire ecosystem of emotional strength. They lose future encouragement. They lose stability. They lose comfort. They lose wisdom. They lose the one person who would have protected them from their own self-destructive tendencies. And once that is gone, their life begins unraveling in ways they can't explain. They start encountering problems that used to be manageable but now feel overwhelming. They face loneliness in moments where they once had your presence. They begin to feel the weight of choices that were once softened by your support. And this is where the realization hits them. You were never ordinary. You were never replaceable. You were never just someone. You were the person who provided them with emotional wealth. And emotional wealth is far more powerful than anything material. They will try to find replacements. They always do. That's part of the tragedy. They search for someone who will listen like you, care like you, understand like you, forgive like you, and stand by them with the same depth as you. But what they find instead are people who operate on surface levels, people who don't invest, who don't nurture, who don't see them in the ways you did. And when they compare these shallow connections to the depth you offered, the contrast is blinding. This contrast becomes the punishment for their betrayal, not inflicted by you, but inflicted by reality. They believed they could throw away something rare and find it again easily. They believed they could betray you without losing anything meaningful. But now they understand losing you wasn't losing a person. It was losing the most transformative presence in their life. And here's the deeper truth. Your absence teaches them what your presence tried to show them. It teaches them the importance of loyalty, respect, and appreciation. It teaches them what real support looks like by forcing them to notice its absence. It teaches them that the greatest mistake they ever made was not recognizing your value before they destroyed the connection. So yes, the fourth keynote is painfully accurate. The person they lost was their greatest asset. And one day, whether in quiet reflection in the middle of a difficult moment or when comparing someone new to the irreplaceable depth you offered, they will come to the realization they never expected. They didn't betray someone ordinary. They betrayed the person who could have changed their life for the better. And that loss will follow them far longer than the pain ever followed you. Your comeback is not just proof that you survived the betrayal. It is the undeniable evidence that the person who betrayed you destroyed their own future, not yours. People often assume that betrayal leaves the victim broken, weakened, or permanently scarred. But what they fail to realize is that betrayal has a very different effect on a person who is emotionally resilient, morally grounded, and deeply self-aware. For you, the betrayal became a turning point, a moment that forced you to confront pain, rebuild your strength, and evolve into a wiser, sharper, more capable version of yourself. But for the betrayer, that same moment became the beginning of a long, silent decline. While you were growing, they were decaying. Healing from betrayal requires strength, but it also creates strength. At first, you might feel like you're falling apart. Your trust is shaken. Your beliefs about loyalty, love, or friendship may feel shattered. As time passes, something remarkable happens. You begin to understand yourself with greater clarity. You recognize what you deserve. You set boundaries that are no longer negotiable. You become more selective with who you let into your life. You learn to validate yourself instead of seeking validation from others. In short, you rise, not by forgetting the betrayal, but by using it as fuel to become unbreakable. And this process, although painful, becomes the foundation of a profound transformation. Meanwhile, the betrayer isn't going through transformation, they're going through deterioration. Because when someone acts against their own conscience, they don't just hurt someone else, they damage the moral structure they need to build a meaningful future. A person who betrays must carry the weight of knowing what they did. They have to live with the awareness that they violated trust, destroyed loyalty, and acted beneath their own standards. This awareness doesn't disappear. It follows them, it shapes their decisions, it erodes their self-respect, and without self-respect, no life can thrive. Your comeback exposes this difference beautifully. As you begin to heal, you start making better choices. You pursue healthier relationships. You invest in your growth. You remove toxicity from your environment. Every step you take forward highlights the contrast between your path and theirs. You rise because you chose to face the pain instead of hiding from it. You rise because you allowed the wound to teach you something meaningful. You rise because you were forced to rebuild, and in rebuilding, you discovered strengths you didn't know you had. The betrayer, however, is sinking, not dramatically, not suddenly, but quietly and steadily. They struggle to trust new people because they know what betrayal looks like from the inside. They struggle to maintain relationships because guilt makes them defensive, insecure, or emotionally disconnected. They struggle to feel deserving of love, success, or peace because deep down they know they harmed someone who didn't deserve it. Their future becomes limited by the unresolved damage within their character. Their relationships become shallow. Their emotional state becomes unstable. Their ambitions lose momentum, not because of you, but because of the fracture they created in themselves. And here's the irony. They often don't understand why their life is falling apart. They don't see the connection between their betrayal and the chaos that follows. They attribute it to bad luck, timing, or other people, refusing to recognize that the internal collapse began the moment they chose to betray someone who was loyal. While you grew stronger by confronting the truth, they weakened by avoiding it. Your comeback is painful for them to witness, even if they pretend not to care. Because your comeback reveals a truth that their ego cannot handle. You were never the one holding them back. You were the one holding them up. They expected you to break. They expected you to chase them, to crumble in their absence, to lose direction. But you didn't. Instead, you evolved, and every new achievement you make, every new boundary you set, every new version of yourself you step into, serves as a reminder of what they lost. Your progress becomes their torment. Your growth becomes their regret. Your strength becomes the mirror that reflects their weakness. They begin to realize that the damage they caused did not stop your life, it stopped theirs. And this realization often arrives at the moment they least expect, when they see you thriving, confident, surrounded by healthier relationships, driven by a stronger purpose. In that moment, they understand the truth they tried so hard to ignore. Their betrayal didn't destroy you, it revealed you, it awakened you. It turned you into someone they never believed you could become. And that is why your comeback is the ultimate proof. It proves that the betrayal was not the end of your story. It was the end of theirs. It proves that they did not ruin your future. They ruined their own. It proves that you were not the fragile one they were. Every step you take forward is a reminder that the one who lost the most was never you. It was the person who believed they could break you without breaking themselves. Your rise is their consequence. Your strength is their lesson. And your evolution is the undeniable evidence that they didn't ruin your life. They ruined the life they could have had with you.